After spending over 150 hours playing Wayfinder, I believe it has a lot of potential to find its place even in the crowded live service games market. However, the team at Airship Syndicate has a long battle ahead of them through the gloom of technical issues before I think it's in a good spot to do so.
Wayfinders. Do you remember the fall? The gloom descended on Skylight. You rallied to protect the beacon.
Wayfinder is an action MMORPG, and it is a blend of Warframe's character collecting and weapon crafting, and randomly generated dungeons with events, challenges, and more you'd find in some roguelite games like Hades or Risk of Rain 2. These dungeons are called Lost Zones, and that's where you'll be spending most of your time. These and hunts, which are boss battles with more challenging mechanics, can be done solo or match made with up to 3 other players, and you can mix and match your favorite Wayfinders to play as with any weapon you've crafted in your arsenal. There are plenty of different melee weapons where you'll dish out combos with swords or two-handed axes, or if you fancy ranged combat, you can choose from either shotguns or rifles, hitting those perfect reloads. The dungeons themselves offer a decent amount of variety, but you'll definitely see a lot of the repeated tile sets across the currently available zones. I do think they were able to strike a balance though and do a decent job of making each environment in a Lost Zone feel distinct. First one you'll discover is a maze-like castle crypt with long corridors and tons of traps and hazards everywhere, compared to the later game Lost Zones that have much more open areas, making it feel like you're actually lost in this creepy snow-swept forest. I just think the game does a great job at kind of blending these different environments together to make the world feel more rich, even if they're all just based off these randomized tile sets. There's a total of 6 Wayfinders currently available to play, and more will be added with each new season. Yes, this will be a season-based live service game with new content being added throughout, like new weapons to craft, new dungeons, and bosses to take on. This will be a free-to-play title once it fully releases early next year, so the game takes once again from the Warframe playbook, letting you skip the grind by purchasing in-game currency to instantly unlock Wayfinders and weapons. During this early access period, however, you need to purchase one of the founder packs to play the game. These range from $20 to $150, getting you various kinds of goodies at each of the several buy-in tiers, and all bundles get you access to this game's version of the Battle Pass and tokens that let you instantly unlock any of the characters you choose. While I don't blame anyone for groaning hearing about another live service game with another battle pass, I will give Airship some credit here, as once you purchase this pass, it will not expire once a new season kicks in, like how a lot of other live games treat their battle passes. Instead, once you have multiple reward towers, you can choose which one you want to work on at any given time. Overall, I think the lower buy-in tiers are more worthwhile if you want to play or try the game as of right now, because a lot of the higher tier rewards are coming later in the early access period, and you will have the option to upgrade later if you so desire.
It's about time. You won't get through me!
During my playtime, I focused on 2 different characters. Wingrave, he is a tank and healer hybrid from the starting roster with abilities that heal himself and a skill that lets him taunt opponents, drawing their attacks and letting allies heal as they land hits on that taunted enemy. The other character I played was Venomous, who's unlocked through the Battle Pass, is a ranged fighter who benefits from using guns and has skills that apply poison effects to deal a lot of damage and control areas of the arena by putting down poison clouds. I really enjoyed Wingrave's playstyle, but I also tend to lean more towards tank characters in these types of games. I like being able to help my teammates in the thick of it when fights get hairy, and he has a really fun set of skills to play in that role. If these character types don't sound interesting, however, there are other characters to choose from, like Nis, who is a damage dealer who has a focus on dual dagger melee combat, and Silo, who's another ranged fighter who has a lot of debuffing abilities and also uses explosives. This is definitely where Wayfinder shines the most right now, is its fun action combat and the mix of different character playstyles you can choose from. Outside of that though, Wayfinder really does put the early and early access. A lot of gameplay systems feel either partially done or are missing important aspects and need refinement. Things like sorting through menus for accessories you'll equip to your characters, or echoes, which are mods that you slot into characters to boost stats, can be a pain to navigate right now. They even recently patched the game to put a cap on the max of these items you can hold, because hardcore players were already amassing so many of of these that the game was kicking them back to the main menu and even tanking performance for them and other players when in the main hub together. Generally though, the game needs polish in the performance department for sure. When running Lost Zones, it runs okay on PlayStation 5, but when in the main hub or the larger Lost Zones later in the game, the frame rate takes a hit and even has stuttering in some of the heavy combat moments. The most prevalent performance hit the game has is when in the main hub, if you go up to this large portal that you used for matchmaking, the game will freeze or lock up for a couple of seconds before you can move again and interact with anything every time you go up to it. Besides performance issues, many systems in the game I think still need a lot of refining. Echoes drop from enemies at different rarities that you will slot into your character and weapons, but do so completely randomly. While they drop aplenty, there's no way to target a specific rarity by hunting specific creatures or upping the difficulty to the highest tier on a Lost Zone. This even applies to things like crafting materials for characters and weapons themselves. So it makes taking on these higher difficulties feel less rewarding and worthwhile when I'm not getting anything additional out of it, like getting higher rarity materials or better loot in general. The only thing difficulty currently benefits is the overly complicated currency system. There is a currency called Spectra in the game, and it has a completely unnecessary amount of varieties to the point of making none of them matter. Here's how it breaks down. Let's say you choose the first Codex Hall Lost Zone on a tier 1 difficulty. That drops a basic type of Spectra called Silver Spectra. If you up the difficulty tier, it then becomes a Shining or Exalted variant of that type of Spectra, and those variants only drop from specific difficulty tiers. To add an extra layer of confusion, when you add a modifier to your dungeon run or a boss hunt, you will still get the variant type of Spectra from a certain difficulty tier, but you also get a type of Spectra that drops because of the modifier you put on, and these also come in the difficulty tier variants. And we're not even done yet. What specific Lost Zone or hunt you've chosen can also change which variant of Spectra drops, making for over 60 different variants of a single currency type. This mess is also on top of the unique material drops you'll need from a specific boss or event in a Lost Zone that you will need to acquire to craft a specific weapon or character. So while yes, the core of this game is all about grinding crafting materials from certain activities, this layer of Spectra currency just feels entirely needless because of all of these variants. They add an extra layer to keep track of that is confusing and does not really add any kind of value to the gameplay loop of farming for materials already in the game. Leveling multiple characters and weapons is also kind of a slog right now, as once you complete the main quests in the game, which grant you huge experience boosts, you'll lose out on this extra XP on the other characters and weapons you have. All the characters and weapons have specific materials you need and come from specific bosses. Thus, once you unlock stuff you might want to actually use, you'll have to replay a lot more of the early content over and over to get these things leveled. Leveling the reward tower is also a slog right now because the current content gives very little progress and the game doesn't have dailies or weeklies just yet. So while I have hit around 150 hours in the game and have maxed out 2 characters and weapons, I still haven't even finished leveling this pass yet. That's how slow it is right now. They have at least outlined their plans to remedy a few of these complaints with their roadmap for the game during early access, specifically things like better ways to level additional characters and weapons and streamlining the Spectra currency. But as it still currently stands, I'd recommend Wayfinder only to people who enjoy grinding in looter games and MMOs and not much outside of this audience. If you're mildly curious, I just look to keep up with their social channels for updates or play very casually while things are getting updated and refined. But I'd say for someone as myself who has over 3,000 hours in a game like Destiny 2 and always wants to find a new game in this genre to sink into, Wayfinder has a ton of potential. It already stands out for me from its contemporaries due to its gorgeous art style and comic book inspired look. Airship Syndicate has a lot of pedigree in this department, having made things like Darksiders and League of Legends spin-offs. And when you look around at the live service genre landscape and see nothing but hyper-realistic sci-fi shooters or gritty post-apocalypse settings, even the most dreary-looking areas of Wayfinder stands out to me even if it's not wholly original. I once again find myself rooting for another live service game to find success even with the volatile nature of games in this genre. There are a lot of rough edges here, but there's also fun too. The third-person action combat feels great, and the setting and art direction are gorgeous, but only time will tell if this game can receive the polish it needs and refinements to its core systems. I think we truly won't be able to tell if Wayfinder can survive the gloom of early access until larger updates are made when a new season launches later this year, and even probably beyond on that when a full launch happens early next year. Regardless, as a live service sicko, I will endure some of these issues to provide feedback because I really hope this game finds its footing and has years of updates ahead of it.